Good evening. I'm David Herbert from Global Business Solutions. Those of you that don't know what we do, we're part of Mayo Clinic. It was formed in 2011 to largely help drive out Mayo's strategy to connect with consumers as we broaden out from seeing patients at Mayo Clinic to connecting to other providers to connecting with consumers. We think connecting with that broader population can deliver value, accomplish our mission, and create relationships that will allow folks, when they do need to come to Mayo Clinic and the care we offer within our walls, they'll think of us and know where we are. So as we were formed, we were given this not insignificant goal of growing the number of people we connect with per year from 20 million that we had in 2011 to 200 million by 2020. About a 10 times growth. We've got almost a similar growth goal from Jeff Bolton to grow our revenue associated with those businesses. So as we looked at that and where we're going to go and the team, I partnered with Dr. Paul Limberg, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. One of the reasons that goal was set is it's both achievable, but it's necessarily disruptive. You can't get there with just line extensions of things we've been doing before. We need to look at disruptive, big new initiatives. It needs to be global, and it almost always needs to be partnered to allow us to focus on what we do well, which is connecting to Mayo knowledge, and we can connect out to people. And then rely on partners for technology, speed, market, distribution channels. So that was our appetite, and Treasury helped introduce us to Social Plus Capital, we met with about a year ago. And we engaged in an interaction, many of you have been part of these, where we come and talk about what our appetites are, what our goals. And it's with great partners like Ted and his partners who are wonderful people. By the way, you may not know us from Ted with his fairly exotic background and a number of places he's been, but he's a North Dakota boy. Grand Forks. And follows the Fighting Sioux hockey team of all things. So they're great guys, and we met with them and talked about the goal. They came back and started suggesting some ideas, and from that interaction, the notion of forming a company called Remote Health Services was formed, which Mayo did with Social Plus Capital. And they said, we don't really like business plans. They said, well, we got to have a business plan. No, it's better to create a MVP, minimal viable product, and do it fast. That'll tell you a lot more, get you down the road, get you moving. So what we're going to do is form this company. We're going to get a CEO in there to move quickly. People, and get an MVP in place by midsummer 2015. So Jeff Clapp, CEO, was put in place at the beginning of the year. He'd be here tonight, but he had to go to the White House instead, apparently. I don't know exactly what that commitment was, but we thought that was understandable. So we're going to have Adam Dole, one of our new business managers, who lives in Silicon Valley. It was a fantastic person to have there that could come in and work with this initiative, work with the new company. Scott Ising's here, who runs our advanced market development team. Dr. Pratibha Varki, I don't get her time. She was also very involved. They worked really hard to hit this aggressive schedule of getting these products in place and launching an incredible product that we are targeting to hit the market in September. So Adam Dole run through this and do his best job at doing what Jeff Clapp will do as the CEO.
Thank you, David. So I've got a really fun role because I'm similar to that of an entrepreneur in residence, but I get to embed myself in the Better team on a day-to-day basis, working with Ted and the team. It's an amazing opportunity, great facilities, and I think really, when you look at the number 200 million, depending on who you talk to, that's either a really big number, but when you talk to a lot of the people that have helped form Social Plus Capital, 200 million is actually not that big. And so what I see is the real big opportunity here is when you take the best clinical partner in the world and you match that with the best venture capital partner in the world, this number doesn't seem unattainable. And I think that's what we're ultimately trying to do with Better. I think everybody lives in their own unique bubbles. I think in Rochester, there is a unique bubble around this unique healthcare experience that not everybody gets to experience, but when you're here, it is amazing. It's unfortunate that the rest of the world doesn't get access to the type of experience here. When you're in Silicon Valley, I think we live in a different bubble where a lot of technology is being pushed through different opportunities without necessarily stepping outside that bubble to see how is the rest of the United States and world adopting or not adopting some of these technologies. So when we look at some of the unmet needs that Better is really addressing, we wanted to step outside our individual bubbles and address unmet needs that were really documented by third-party sources, really backed up by data. As a data-driven organization, this was a really important step for us in the process to not only gain the trust of our partners and our investors, but really making sure that we're not drinking our own Kool-Aid. And so I'm not going to read through all the words on the slide, but just point out a couple of things. We all know that new legislation is creating a lot of consumerism in healthcare right now. So things like defined contributions with employee benefits. That's great. It's going to return a lot of cash to employees that can then spend their dollars on the open marketplace. But what some of these studies have shown is that's actually creating a lot of confusion. People start holding on to that money. They don't know how to spend it. And they're actually consuming fewer preventive services like flu shots and mammograms, things that would otherwise be paid for or covered through the defined contributions are getting unused. And again, this is not happening in low education, low resourced areas. This is happening in Northern California. This study by Health Affairs is actually done through a study with Kaiser and their members in Northern California. Another point here that I just want to highlight is the need for actionable data. With this consumerism of healthcare, there's more data flowing around healthcare pipes and devices than we've ever seen before, and that's only going to increase. The problem is a lot of that data is not actionable. It might give you a reading, it might even give you a chart, but it doesn't open the door for you and actually lead you to making that action that's going to change your behavior or your outcomes. It's a two-sided marketplace. So while we have consumer unmet needs, we also have a lot of provider unmet needs. You could argue that it's also a three-sided marketplace if you incorporate payers in there, but we're not going to address them in our first version, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. But if we look at the provider unmet needs, what does it mean for physicians and other providers when they can only spend 8 minutes with their patients? And as consumerism of healthcare extends into concierge care, it's changing the expectations. And providers don't have the types of tools necessary to enable a lot of the self-management that they would like their patients to take on. And the last point here I think I just want to highlight is compliance with some of the regulations that are happening is going to not just be table stakes, but how can we actually use those table stakes as a competitive advantage so that providers can actually engage with their patients and have more of a customer relationship management approach to things, which is unheard of in healthcare outside of areas like Rochester. We really think that not being another data silo for what we're trying to do with Better is a core operating principle of the company. We don't want to be another data silo. We want data to be able to flow freely between the different stakeholders in somebody's health ecosystem. And with that, our solution to some of these unmet needs is Better, your personal health advocate. An evidence-based mobile health advocate service powered by Mayo Clinic that provides individuals with personalized, actionable, and real-time guidance, feedback, and support. I want to highlight two things on this slide. One, service. While we're starting with an iOS app, we strongly let people know that this is not an app. It will be delivered through a lot of different interfaces. We're starting with a mobile app right now, but we see this really being powered by a lot of different aggregated services coming together that can be accessed through the most appropriate screen in the right context for you. We're starting this summer with iOS. The second word that I want to highlight again is actionable. I think right now that's probably the one operating principle of our company that we hold each other to on a daily basis. We will not be asking consumers or users for any data if we can't return it and close a feedback loop in a meaningful way for them. And I think that that actionable piece is what's missing in a lot of the digital health solutions today. So A couple more design principles in the approach that we're taking to this. We've been calling the 3 Ps for our consumers and providers. On one hand, we've almost got like this spectrum of personalization and population. We want this experience, this service, to feel like it was made for the individual. From the questions that we ask, the information, the recommendations that we're pushing to people who are using our service, to the way that it looks and feels on the interface that you're consuming it on. We want it to feel like it was made for you and personalized. That can sometimes feel at odds with this idea that we're going to manage large-scale populations and really enable providers to be able to be more efficient and go from managing, maybe a panel of 500 people to a panel of 1,000 patients. But we feel like through the appropriate use of technology, we can actually bridge that tension and leverage it. And we think that there's a lot of good value there that hasn't really been tapped into in a lot of other companies that we've been watching. And then the third bullet point here, pervasive. This needs to be where you need it at any time, whether that's your mobile phone, your TV screen, the web, and for providers as well, not just for consumers. We really talk about how Better is going to scale great people. There's a great quote floating around Silicon Valley by a well-known investor who basically said, information technology is going to replace 80% of physicians. We fundamentally disagree with that, and we'd like to kind of tweak that a little bit more to say that information technology is going to scale great physicians. So, enough words. I want to show you some screens. I think both Ted and I probably have the latest builds on our phones, so afterwards, feel free to come up to us and show you more than just a couple of slides of screens here. But I really want to walk you through some of the key areas of the service as it's being built on the iOS device right now. So what you're looking at right now is the home screen experience. This is the screen that we expect people to, or that we would like people to engage with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis when they pull up the service on their phone. You can see at the top, and these are just 3 examples of screenshots of the experience. You can see at the top the "What can I help you with" bar. After you've been signed up, it would say, "Adam, what can I help you with?" And it'll start getting to know me. And it will understand how I'm searching in here. And you can search for anything. It's going to be pulling content from one of the world's largest consumer health databases, which is the MayoClinic.com site, and a lot of other things that are baked into there, like recipes and drug information and all kinds of consumer stuff. Right now, the website gets about 40 million unique views a month. So there's quite a lot of traffic there because there's so much value there that we've embedded into the system. You can also search for things that you've engaged with in the app itself. So you can search for your own drugs, you can search for your own vaccine records, anything that you've engaged with, you can find. One of my favorite examples is, I'm hungry right now, where should I eat? And we've got databases of local restaurants, and we would match that with your care plan and your risk profile to know whether you should be eating a low-sodium diet. We'll recommend certain things to you. So that's the search bar. The main area here is really the content that comes in as a result of that. So depending on what you're searching for, depending on what your needs are, we will push very actionable pieces of content or very actionable pieces of recommendation to you here. You can see this is an article from your doctor. Here's a question that we'd like to get answered. We don't expect anyone to ever fill out a health risk assessment in its entirety. 140 questions sitting at once in a static environment does not do anybody much good, but we think that those questions are really important, and we're going to hopefully get answers to them through the interactions of the service that you're having. And lastly, there's some paid services, messaging with your provider and that sort of thing. On the bottom, there's more of a timeline. You can add certain things to your timeline as to your discretion. Some of the best principles, best practice principles right now in mobile design. You can see probably some cues from some of that stuff there. And a menu where if we push that button, it kind of spiders out and gives you a couple of options for key components of the service. The next slide here is just showing you a snapshot of what the content would look like. So if you open an article and you were reading this article that was geared toward you, so you searched for migraines and now you're reading something about migraines, you can click on any sort of clinical word, and it's all tagged semantically and appropriately, so you can add that word to your record. You can talk to a professional about that, and as you work through, it'll ask you questions about whether this is for you or for a loved one, so that it's appropriately segmenting your interactions, building up a dynamic health profile about you the entire time. And at the end, we think one of the premium services that's going to be really important for people is to not interrupt them when they're reading this, but allowing them to talk to a health professional at any time when they're reading this, if they all of a sudden feel like they need to do that and they don't want to necessarily finish the entire article. It's kind of all, the technology is all embedded to be able to connect you with a human, which is really important. Another function of the service is the symptom checker. So if you say, oh, I've got a headache, I'm not feeling well, it'll launch the symptom checker. And it will know whether you're searching for, it'll ask you, is this for you or is this for your daughter? This is Jeff, our CEO, and his daughter, David Mackenzie. And based on that, it's going to ask different questions because, again, this needs to be a very personal experience. If I'm searching for myself, I don't want it to ask me what my age is, what my gender is. It should know, just as a health advocate should if we're standing next to each other talking about this. And so it guides you through a very unique experience, very personalized to your health profile, and gets you to a place at the end where, depending on what the outcome is, you can also talk to a health professional about that and get more actionable things based on the content as well from that. And the last set of screens here that I want to show is really about the family history tool. So when we talk with our physician leads and our medical directors for Better, one of the things that they care most about is the family history record, because that can really power a lot of follow-up questions and things that we really want to be able to follow up on later on. And so we think that an individual is really made up of their health ecosystem, and those are close friends and family. Right now we're building this primarily for the close-knit family. We're going to explore some other models with friends and that sort of thing, but we're keeping it pretty tight-knit for now. And you can see in the middle what a health profile might look like for any person that you could either build up a health profile about, or it could be about myself. And we don't ever expect somebody to go in and fill out these profiles. We really want these profiles to be filled out dynamically as you're engaging with the app or the service on any sort of interface, knowing that if you ever want to go in and change something, it's there, it's flexible enough to do that, but we don't expect people to really engage with the profile as much if we do this right. And lastly, I think it's really important to note that while people are self-diagnosing themselves all the time with consumers of healthcare and Dr. Google and everything else that's existing out there, we want to recognize the difference between what somebody has done and is self-medicating themselves with versus something that's being legitimized through an EMR or an actual diagnosis. And so we actually will break those out and designate certain tagging structures for both of those things, because we think that they're both important and they should both be part of the conversation, but they need to be accounted for. And David talked about the team already, and there's many more people behind this team working tirelessly to make this all happen. And we're about 4 months into building our beta product, which will, as David mentioned, hopefully be launched publicly in the fall. And I believe that is it. So getbetter.com is our website. You can go there and sign up for the beta. You'll start getting some of the builds as it's released. Thank you.